"Dude, check this out. His arm looks like melted plastic." That's what the teen whispered as he snapped a photo of the waiter reaching for their plates. The man didn't react, just kept serving, eyes focused, steps steady. But that night the boy's father saw the photo. And when he recognized the faded military tattoo beneath the burn, everything changed. If this made you stop and think, comment. Respect for those who carry their service in silence. The restaurant was busy that Friday night. Families celebrating weekends, couples on dates, children coloring paper placemats with crayons. Ambient chatter filled the warm space, punctuated by laughter and the clink of silverware against plates. No one noticed the waiter scars at first. Daniel Morgan moved efficiently between tables, his white button-down shirt crisp, his movements practiced and precise. He balanced trays with an expert's touch, navigating the crowded floor with quiet dignity. His left sleeve was always buttoned at the wrist, even on the hottest days, until he reached across the table of a teenage boy named Kyle and his 3 friends. As Daniel extended his arm to place a basket of breadsticks, his sleeve rose slightly, revealing mottled skin that twisted from wrist to elbow in shades of pink and white. Kyle leaned toward his buddy, snickering behind his menu. "Dude, check this out. His arm looks like melted plastic." One of the boys whispered back, "Probably some kitchen accident. That's what happens when you drop out of high school." Another added, "Maybe he was playing with matches." Kyle pulled out his phone, angling it discreetly, and snapped a photo just as the man placed their plates down. The flash was off, but the shutter sound seemed to echo between them. Daniel didn't flinch. He'd heard it all before. The whispers, the theories, the barely concealed disgust. He just smiled slightly, nodded, and moved on to his next table. Years of practice had taught him to wear invisibility like armor. The boys laughed not loudly, but loud enough for nearby diners to glance over, then quickly look away. Their food arrived. They ate. They left a mess and a mediocre tip. Daniel cleaned it all without complaint. At home that night, Jason Wheeler scrolled through his son's phone, a weekly check they'd agreed upon after Kyle had gotten in trouble for cyberbullying last semester. College applications were coming up and they couldn't risk any more incidents. He flipped through photos of basketball practice memes, selfies with friends, and then stopped cold when he saw the picture. The burns, the skin, grafts, the uneven texture that spoke of multiple surgeries and painful recovery. And beneath it, barely visible but unmistakable to someone who knew what to look for, a faded eagle globe and anchor. The Marine Corps tattoo partially erased by whatever catastrophe had claimed the flesh around it. Jason's stomach tightened. He had served 2 years ago. Not in combat, but he buried friends who had friends who came home with scars, both visible and invisible. Friends who deserve better than becoming punchlines in teenage jokes. Jason stared at the image, hearts sinking as the full impact hit him. The photo was taken to mock someone who'd likely suffered more than these kids could imagine. He scrolled through Kyle's text messages and found the photo had already been shared with comments like, "Check out Freddy Krueger and burn victim 911. He had raised his son better than this, or thought he had. He called Kyle downstairs, his voice tight with controlled anger. "Where did you take this?" Kyle slouched against the doorframe, irritated at the interruption. "Some restaurant goss or Yepes something Italian? Why do you know what this is?" Jason asked, zooming in on the tattoo partially visible beneath the scar tissue. Kyle shrugged. "Just a weird scar, I guess. The guy's arm was all messed up." "No," Jason said firmly, his voice low. "That's not just a scar. That's the mark of someone who's seen hell and walked out. That's a Marine Corps, too." Kyle went quiet, his smirk fading as his father's expression registered. "But how do you know it's all twisted? Because I wore the same one," Jason said, rolling up his sleeve to reveal his own eagle globe and anchor intact proud on his forearm. "Before you were born. And I know men who came back with worse scars than this, men who deserve respect, not ridicule." Kyle stared at the floor, embarrassment washing over him. That night, Jason made a call to an old friend who'd kept his connections to the core. The following evening, he and Kyle returned to the restaurant, Yepes, as it turned out. The waiter Doy spotted them immediately and stiffened. He recognized the boy, and his eyes flickered momentarily with something like resignation. Another day, another reminder of what he'd lost. "Can we talk?" Jason asked quietly when Daniel approached their table. "After your shift, maybe?" Daniel nodded slowly, weariness evident in his posture. They waited until closing. The manager, sensing something important, gave them space in a corner booth. "My son took a photo of you," Jason began bluntly. "It was wrong, disrespectful. We're here to make it right." Daniel sighed his fingers unconsciously, tracing the scars through his sleeve. "He's not the first, probably won't be the last. Kids are curious about differences." "This isn't curiosity," Jason replied, showing him the messages. "This is cruelty, and he knows better now." Kyle couldn't meet Daniel's eyes. "I'm sorry, sir. I was stupid." Daniel assessed the teen years of pain evident in his gaze. "You're young. Young people make mistakes." An uncomfortable silence settled between them until Jason asked softly, "Philia?" Daniel froze, his expression shifting subtly as recognition dawned. "Twice you serve, 8 years stateside, mostly intelligence." "I lost some good friends there," Daniel said quietly. "And some of me too, obviously." "How long?" Jason asked. The shorthand of veterans needing no explanation. 12 years. Force recon. Then an IED on a road we'd cleared the day before. 3 guys didn't make it back. I got the souvenir package. He gestured to his arm with grim humor. Burns over 40%, 26 surgeries, 2 years in recovery. Lucky all things considered, Kyle listened, his face paling as the reality of what he'd mocked became clear. "And now you're here," Jason said, carrying plates instead of a rifle. Daniel straightened, a flash of pride cutting through his weariness. "Honorable work pays the bills. People need to eat." "People need to remember, too," Jason replied. "I had friends who came back different. Some with scars, you could see some with the kind you can't. People forget what those marks really mean. Most want to forget." Daniel said, "War isn't comfortable dinner conversation." Jason reached out, offering his hand. "You didn't lose your honor. Your service still matters, and it's time people remembered that." Daniel hesitated, then clasped Jason's hand firmly. For the first time that evening, his smile reached his eyes. Kyle watched the exchange, shame and understanding battling across his young face as he witnessed the brotherhood that transcended years and scars. "I want to make this right," he said suddenly. "Please tell me how." The next Saturday evening, Jason returned to Yepes, but this time with 5 other veterans, some he knew from his service years, others from local veteran support groups. They requested Daniel's action and arrived in waves, not making a scene, simply taking their places. Each wore something identifying their service: a patch, a pin, a cap. One, a retired colonel, wore his full dress, blues medals catching the light as he moved. Other diners noticed the unusual gathering, whispers spreading from table to table as the men greeted Daniel with respect and recognition. The restaurant grew quieter as one by one. They stood to shake his hand when he approached their tables. Daniel maintained his professional demeanor, but his posture gradually shifted. Spine straightening, shoulders, squaring hints of the Marine he'd been emerging from beneath the waiter's careful facade. Halfway through the dinner service, Jason asked the manager for a moment of the staff's time. Curious and a bit concerned, the manager agreed. With permission granted, Jason stood by the kitchen door waiting until the servers, cooks, and bus boys gathered for the impromptu meeting. "This man served our country," he began, voice steady but charged with emotion. "He didn't ask for praise, just respect. And last week, my son and his friends failed him, failed to see the hero behind the scars." Silence filled the room. Restaurant patrons leaned forward in their seats, straining to hear Daniel Morgan served 12 years as a Marine Corps force recon. That means he went places others wouldn't, did things others couldn't. He survived an explosion that killed 3 of his brothers in arms. Those scars, they're not a curiosity or a joke. They're a map of sacrifice. Daniel, uncomfortable in the spotlight, tried to wave it off. "You don't need to do this, Jason. It's fine, but we do." Jason insisted because too many people forget. We look at scars and see only damage, not the strength it took to survive them. Kyle stepped forward from where he'd been waiting by the entrance, carrying a small wooden display case. He approached Daniel, his movements hesitant but determined. "I'm sorry, sir," he said loud enough for nearby tables to hear. "I didn't understand I was stupid." Daniel looked him in the eye, the teenager's sincerity palpable. "Don't stay stupid. That's how we get better." Kyle handed him the case. Inside lay a Purple Heart medal, not Daniel's own, which had been lost during his multiple hospital transfers, but one donated by a veteran who wanted him to have the recognition he deserved. "We called your former commanding officer," Jason explained. "He told us yours was missing. This one belonged to a Marine who died last year. His family wanted another hero to have it." Daniel's composure faltered for the first time, his fingers trembling slightly as they traced the purple and gold. The restaurant patrons, now fully engaged in the unfolding scene, began to applaud softly at first, then building to a resounding acknowledgement that filled the space with sound and emotion. A local news reporter, tipped off by one of the veterans, captured the moment. Within days, the segment aired, "Waiter Scars Tell a Silent Story. Community Learns to Listen." The piece was picked up by national outlets, touching a nerve in a country often divided but united in its complicated relationship with those who serve. The story spread across social media platforms, with Kyle's original mocking photo transformed into a message about judgment and redemption. Strangers began coming to Yepes requesting Daniel's section, their eyes carrying recognition instead of pity. Veterans left patches, coins, and sometimes just notes beside their tips. "Welcome home," most said simply. One evening, a little girl approached his table with her parents' encouragement. She handed him a card with a crayon drawing of an American flag and the words, "Thank you for being strong," written in wobbly letters. Daniel kept every token, not displayed, but carefully stored in a box he'd once kept hidden in his closet, too painful to open. Now each item was a reminder not of what he'd lost, but of what remained unbreakable. "I never wanted attention." And he told Jason over coffee one morning before his shift, "I just wanted to blend in, to be normal again." "There's no normal after what we've seen," Jason replied. "But there's honor in being seen for who you really are." Daniel nodded, understanding passing between them. "The scars don't hurt anymore," he said quietly. "Not the physical ones anyway, and the others?" Jason asked. Daniel looked toward the restaurant where he'd found an unexpected kind of healing. "They're getting better day by day." The restaurant added a sign near the front door, simple and dignified. "This place serves more than food. It serves those who've served." Daniel didn't ask for it, but when he saw it, he smiled, a genuine expression that transformed his serious face. A new policy was implemented. Veterans eat for 50% off on Mondays and Wednesdays. The staff had voted on it unanimously, agreeing to adjust their own tip pools to make up any difference. The owner, moved by Daniel's story and the community response, matched every discount with a donation to the local VA hospital. The restaurant's atmosphere shifted subtly but significantly, not with grand gestures or patriotic displays, but with a deeper awareness. Servers learned to recognize military haircuts, certain tattoos, the bearing that never quite leaves those who served. They shared knowing glances, ensured these guests received extra attention, not out of pity, but respect. Daniel never told the full story of how he got burned. The details remained between him and those who had been there, but people stopped asking because now they understood enough. Some burdens are not for public consumption, some stories not meant to be entertainment. Kyle returned every Saturday, not as a customer, but as someone determined to make amends beyond a single apology. He volunteered at the local VA clinic, initially shelving books in the library, eventually sitting with older veterans who just needed someone to listen. His college essay about the lesson he'd learned from Daniel earned him acceptance letters from schools that had initially seemed beyond his reach. "I learned that courage isn't about being fearless," he wrote. "It's about carrying your scars with dignity." One day, 6 months after their first uncomfortable meeting, Kyle brought Daniel a gift. A framed photo of the Marine Corps emblem, professionally matted and preserved. Beneath it, engraved on a small brass plate earned in silence, worn with pride, Daniel hung it by the staff lockers right where everyone would see it before every shift. A quiet reminder of the stories we never know about those we pass each day. The burns on his arm remained, of course. The skin would never heal completely, would never look normal. But now, on warmer days, Daniel sometimes rolled his sleeve up past the elbow, not to display his scars, but simply because he no longer felt the need to hide them. And throughout the community, something subtle but profound had shifted. Anytime someone made a thoughtless comment about a scar, a limp, a missing limb, there was always someone ready to stand up and say, "You don't know their story, but you can choose to honor it." Subscribe to Ironheart Stories. If you believe some wounds deserve more than stares, they deserve honor.